Hey guys, before we start, a quick shout out to Alpha Dog Nutrition for sponsoring this podcast. Alpha Dog products are now available at dusupply.com, and you can use code ALPHADOG15 at checkout for 15% off and a credit for free shipping to try it yourself. Now let's get you to your podcast.
Welcome to my podcast, where we are going to talk about a lifestyle with dogs and threw in a few life lessons along the way. Whether you're a hound hunter, bird dog enthusiast, running setters, pointers, retrievers, or a flat-out running dog junkie, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Heath Hyatt, a certified law enforcement canine trainer with over 3 decades of personal and professional training and handling experience. It's time for me to pay it forward. So grab your leads, lace up those boots, and come and join me on this lifelong process of teaching, training, and learning. Are you looking to unlock your dog's full potential and give them the best nutrition possible for peak performance? Then look no further. Inukshuk has what you're looking for. Inukshuk's nutrient-dense formulas are crafted to keep your dog's energy high and performance top-notch. Packed with premium proteins and essential fats, Inukshuk delivers the balanced nutrition your dog needs to thrive. From hunting dogs to police canines, Inukshuk is trusted by professionals. Give your dog the power of peak performance with Inukshuk professional dog food.
I'm so behind on all my stuff because I just been hunting so much lately. But I really ain't even kept up with social media.
Yeah, and I'm Maddie's running. They just finished their district for volleyball. Now they're starting regions, and we're doing travel ball. It's like, all right, I don't have time, and I'm trying to start a garage or pole barn to get so I can get my boat and a couple others. I'm gonna put my old hunting truck underneath it. Just trying to get stuff out of the driveway.
Oh yeah,
somewhere where I don't have to. I don't have to cover it up because I hate my boat being out. I hate it being out. So I literally, this evening when I come in, Lowe's delivered my post and concrete, everything. So this evening when I come in, I started my foundation and my footer. So I poured, 6 inches of concrete in all the holes, and then I'll set the post on it. So
yeah,
I'm with you. Like I need to put some of this, like a lot of my recordings on YouTube, and I haven't done it. Like I need to catch up on some reel. Like I've got a bunch of stuff recorded that I need to go in and edit for my reels, and I haven't had time. Like I have not had time.
I don't think people has any idea about whatever happens behind the scenes with all this stuff.
No, I mean it's almost a full-time job.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and I see, and like I kind of schedule my stuff out. I may record 1 or 2 during the week.
Right.
And then on Saturdays or Sundays, mostly Sundays, I go in and I do my editing. I get my stuff downloaded and send it so they'll have it, for the next week or 2. And I've actually gotten behind. I have been 4 or 5 recordings ahead, and I'm 2. I think 2. This will put me 2 ahead. So I'm 2 ahead right now. So I'm catching up to do because, like you said, I've been hunting and running and, working and hunting and volleyball. There's not enough hours in the day.
No, exactly.
So I get it. People, yeah. So, well, we've kind of been rambling here a little bit, and George and I both sit on the board for the American Bear Foundation, and that was probably our introduction to each other, even though I followed him on social media. And you guys, I know, follow him because I see you commenting. I see you liking the videos and the YouTube stuff. And I know that I'm behind the ball, which I usually am, just like we were talking. We are busy, and just trying to keep up with the podcast and stuff on social media and everything that's going on in our daily lives. That, man, I mean, it's a second job. And I tell you, I get tired sometimes. Like I just need to go home. I got it. I need to go home and I need to go to bed. So George has been on a couple of the podcasts. He's been on with Bear a couple times. He's been on with Dustin with Cold Strike. He's on with Brent Vaughn on the YouTubes lives that they do. So I am really like I'm back and clean up here. Like I'm just taking the end of it. But but the reason that I'm doing this is because George and I behind the scenes have a lot of conversations about trainings and dogs and hunting. And I told him last week or the week before last that like we need to get on and talk about this stuff because sometimes we don't even answer our own questions. We just put out thoughts. Like you texted me a couple weeks ago and said, I don't know that I'm looking for an answer, just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
And you run me through a scenario and I'm like, okay. So, that's kind of how some of our conversations go. But we got George Lambert on with Mountain Music and Mules. Everybody follows him on social media. If you don't, you should. George is a great guy, down to earth, and this is one of the things that we as hound hunters, and when I say hound hunters, I'm putting everybody in that category, whether it's coon hunters, bear hunters, lion hunters, cat hunters, fox hunters, coyote hunters, deer hunters. Like we have got to do better about selling ourself and our sport in a good light. And that's something that I really think that you, George, do. And we should take more from you in the way that you handle some things and the way that you present yourself as a whole. And that's what caught my eye with you before we ever talked or met is the perception, like your perception. And I know sometimes reality and perception is not the same, right. But like the perception was really good. The persona, the vibes were good. So anyway.
Yeah, you're making me sound really good. Hope I can live up to all that.
Well, so Ariel and I had done a podcast and we were talking, you had done a video or a post. It was a video. And this has been a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago about having the dogs come off the tree and follow you out. And, right. Ariel and I was talking about that and we actually brought, we threw your name out. We pitched it out there. We was like, George just done a video with this and it's really good if you take the time to watch it. So we were kind of giving you a shout out, even though we didn't know you, but
yeah,
Ariel is a top competitor in, sport dog stuff. She's won, she's titled dog PH3, which is hard. You got to go right. PH1, PH2, PH3. And, I deal with dogs and, when both her and I are like, okay, you can take something from that. Like to me, that's people should listen. And we were name dropping you for the video that you did.
Hey, I don't take that for granted. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So George, just catch us up. What have you been doing this week? You've been hunting. What's been going on in your world?
So hunting. That's basically what I've been doing for the last. Usually, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I do have a construction business that I work I say full time, and a lot of the locals and family members will be laughing at me when I say that. But usually from January till July, I'm remodeling. Obviously, I'm fooling with the dogs all the time, but my income is remodeling, building houses, all that kinds of good stuff. So anyway, that leads up till as soon as August, and I can legally hunt here in Virginia. I'm in the woods. I'm hunting, and I can make a lot of people don't know this either, but I make a little bit of money off that. Far as I can, people send me dogs, and then also from the social media platforms. So putting all that stuff together and making a little bit of extra in the summer from remodeling, then I can hunt from August to about January. Or I can switch to West Virginia, and depending on if the bear go in, West Virginia is typically you can hunt up till about March.
Mm-hmm.
So, but usually the bear are about gone by then.
Yeah,
So,
I know you and I talked about this. I bought my Western because I've been going over and hunting with some guys,
right.
Carl and Nick and Junior in that group. So I've been over there 3 times this year, and I bought my West Virginia license. And I mean, like literally, I mean, one of the mountain ranges I hunt is divided by West Virginia. Like top of the mountain is Virginia, and the other side is West Virginia. And I feel like after the conversation that you and I had, and just being a little bit more observant of things, that I think I'm going to try to tap into that a little bit. Like I could at least get out once or maybe twice a week,
Yes.
Close by with not too long of a drive, and be able just to keep my dogs busy during some of that downtime. And I do, again, I'm very blessed to be able to go hunt with those guys. And, BB and Doug, they let me come down and hunt, down in North Carolina, and I get to hunt down at BB's in the eastern part of Virginia. But, a 2-hour drive is a lot better than a 5-hour drive or a 3-hour drive, especially if you're doing a turn and burn.
Right. Exactly.
And I've done that a couple of days. So, I mean, you're driving 6 hours and you may only hunt 2. So,
yeah.
So I think next year I'm going to look at it a little differently and maybe do a little more scouting and looking around. And like I said, at least get the dogs. If I could get them out, half a dozen times between our season and the December season, I mean, that's more than I've ever done.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people might, if I had to pick one month of the year to hunt, it would be October every time. October, typically the bear are a little bit, I don't know if they're more active, but it seems like they're hitting that feeding stage where they're getting set up for the winter. So it's reasonably easy to find a bear. And then usually, depending on the feed and the situation where you're hunting, usually you can treat them reasonably easy with shorter chases, it seems like.
Yeah, so, that was something else that I think I brought it up on my last podcast. That was something else that you had, I think you had talked about it with Dustin, about if the food crop was good, that it did seem that the bear were easier and more timid, not timid, but more mild. And if there was less, the food was scarce, the bear ran harder, longer, and stayed on the ground and seemed to be a little bit more aggravated.
Yes.
And,
I think, I believe that is true. And just my last 2 weeks, I think I've treated a couple bear of the same bear in the same area. And of all this is getting a little off subject, but the area that I'm hunting right now is full of crab apples. And so long as saying that, the bear are staying right in that area. And usually my chases lately have been under a mile. Every once in a while you'll get on a runner, but most of the times the chases are more like long coon chases. But the bear's got something to eat there. They're laid back. They're treeing. They're not coming out very bad. Every once in a while you have one bell out, but they're setting good. So I don't know. I mean, it does. I think it's something to do with that. I don't know all the details, but it seems like if you got good feed, then you'll have good, sensible bear, if that makes sense.
Well, and again, in the way that I looked at this is that was my experience, and you're kind of validating that same experience in a different location. So there has to be something too. I mean, it's not just me and my opinion now. Like, you and I collaborated and okay, well, both of us are seeing the same thing, and we're in the same region, but we're in different locations, and we're coming up with the same results. So I feel like it has a little bit of a teeth to it. I feel like it's got something to hang on to.
Well, I think the bear are familiar with the area too. When you get on one of them bear that he's not from around that area, or he's not familiar with it, and a lot of times he tries to skedaddle out of there. And then if the dogs put much pressure on him, they catch him in a place that he's not comfortable at. And it has the potential to get ugly fast. Either get ugly if they catch him, or he's going to run and run and run. And sometimes you can't catch him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that'll segue into the conversation we had about the e-collar. And I think this is great because we literally just had this happen in our canine group. I see it. I see it. I don't say I see it all the time, but I've seen it enough to know that you need to recognize it. And once you recognize it, you've got to be able to change your methods a little bit to go back and do some foundational stuff to fix it. So do you want to give the layout of it and we can discuss it, or do you want me to do it?
Go ahead and start it off. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So George and I's conversation was basically, what do you do if you have a hound? Let's just, we're talking about hounds. If you have a hound that is headstrong and you go to apply pressure, stem,
right,
and the stem doesn't work. Of course, we're going to back up. We're going to back train this here in just a minute. So just bear with me. So that you start applying pressure and the dog just continues and continues and continues, and you've limited out on your pressure. Like, you're maxed out and it's still not being effective. So that was the conversation. What do you do? Right. So I'm going to run you through real quick what's happened in the law enforcement world with this. So you guys know that when we certify, we have to send our dogs downrange and to a decoy, somebody standing 50, 60, 70 yards downfield. We have to send the dog on apprehension. And once the dog breaks the halfway plane, we have to recall that dog. All right. So there's numerous ways to train that. So we're not going to go into depth because we could talk about that for days. There's numerous ways to train it. But one of the quickest and the fastest methods is applying stem. You get the dog to stop, and once you get him stopped, you get him turned and come back to you. Or you can terminate him, and terminate means he can down. So the dog can be running, choop, and y'all have seen some videos of these dogs that go into a sliding down in the sport dog world. I can terminate or recall. So that's my options. But I've got to make him do one of the two. He's got to do one of the two. So what happens is when we start applying stem, the dog is he's so amped up in prey drive because he is that is his ultimate reward is the decoy standing at the end of the field. So let's make this into the bear hound world. Your dog has went from standing on the box or free casting through the woods. He picks up odor. Okay. He picks up odor and now he's trailing it. But once he jumps, that prey drive goes from 0 to 25, 30. And once the jump happens, it just topped 100. So it's kind of like drag racing, right? Exactly. Can you go from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 in 5 seconds or whatever? So, so that's kind of what it is. So once that animal's jumped, the dog is at his maximum prey drive. Same thing with our police dogs. They're at their maximum. And we can get into pain tolerance and we can get into all the other factors that play into this because there's a bunch of them, but we want to try to simplify it. You start applying pressure and it does not work. Okay. Well, the first thing that we have to understand is, did we do our foundation training right? Does the dog understand when dad says here or stop? That means when I hear tone, because most people use tone, right? When I hear the tone button, that means come back to dad, no matter what I'm doing. And then again, we can get into the whole gamut of, did you do distraction training? Did you do this? Did you do that? We're kind of skipping through some things just to kind of give you the meat and potatoes of what needs to be done to fix it.
Right.
All right. So you have a dog that's out chasing game, and most of the time it's going to be off game. You're not trying to stem them off of, the animal that you're wanting to pursue. So my dog's running a deer. Now I've got to stop it. And I know you guys have heard me say numerous times, that once my dog's engaged in that activity, most of the time I go cut them off. That's what I do. I just cut them off. But in this particular situation, that was not an option. So now you apply a stem, the dog keeps going, and you turn the stem up, and the dog keeps going, and now it's maxed out. Well, this was not George's fault because it happened before he got the dog. So we had a conversation about, okay, what do you do? What do you do to fix this? So you kind of got to go back to ground zero. You got to go back, and I want you to tell the dog about being in the yard and doing all the things he's supposed to do until he hits that. Like, so unstimulated, the dog's almost like a robot.
Yes.
And stimulated, it's like I have no control.
So basically, I'll just give a quick rundown, then I'll let you go right back at it. But so the reason that me and Heath actually even had this conversation was I had a English dog sent to me recently, and the owner, great guy, but he said that the dog just didn't respond well, or well, I should say he just doesn't respond to a tone or basically the e-collar in general when he's in prey drive, or even when he's, I wouldn't even say just in prey drive, when he's in the hunting scenario in general. So anyway, I have the dog around the house. When I get a dog sent to me, I'll turn him loose, play with him in the yard, make sure I can handle him pretty decent before I put him in the hunting world. Dog handled great, was no problem. Won't necessarily load, but he'd let me catch him, no problem. Come to the back of the truck, I can stick him in the truck. Don't give me any problems. There's no barking at the house. So I took him hunting the first day, and I let him number 12 is what we reference him as, but I let old number 12 out of the truck, and he heads up the road. I yell at him. I know he is well aware of what tone and stem, the whole e-collar, he knows what it means. But he went up the road, toned him. He ignored it. I gave him some light stem, ignored it, turned it up a little bit more. And he eventually did come back towards me, but he just blew right past me. And I saw he got down the road, and I could still visually see him. And he threw up his head, and he hit a scent. I ain't even sure exactly what it was, but off the mountain he went, and you could max it out, and there was no recall. Absolutely blew through all of it. So that's kind of what I was dealing with, and that's what brought the conversation with me and Heath up. What to do, what was the best way to deal with that, and try to get that dog headed back in the right direction.
Yeah, so first things first is this dog was already pre-programmed. Like, if he was doing that stuff that George attempted, then the dog was already classical condition. We talk about classical condition, and you can cause problems without knowing you're causing problems. So that right. Was the first thing that happened there, is that the dog was already classical conditioning to that. If I can just bear through it, eventually it goes away.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what he was dealing with. So we got to talking about, well, you're going to have to go back to a confined area. And George's like, nope, he does it in the yard. He's fine. He does everything he's supposed to do. And I was like, okay. So then my second suggestion was, all right, we need to change that to another confined location. So do you have a soccer field or a football field, something that's enclosed? Tennis courts are great, but I will warn you for this, that pavement that's in the tennis courts will rip your dog's pads if you start doing a lot of exercises on those type of surfaces. I will tell you that for a fact, because we've done it. But you need something that's enclosed that's not normal for him. Not, he's around the house, he's around other dogs, so that's normal. Okay, so right. We take him out of that environment and put him somewhere else. And we start working on it there just to make sure that, okay, he understands this in a different environment. And then I told George what I would do is you've got to start all over with the E. You've got to reprogram the whole E thing. And depending on how long he has been accustomed to that, it may take you a month to get it back right. It may take you 2 months. But I suggested that he put a 100-foot, at least 100-foot long line on him and just drop. So when George drops him out of the back of the truck and, to clean out, hook it on him and let him go. And I've got 100 foot to be able to catch him. I can go step on it or whatever. And then if I want to start applying some light stem, and this was something else that's very important for people to understand. When you're starting this over, okay, so it's already been maxed. It's already been started. It's already done. So I'm going back to 0. So I'm not going to a higher level. I'm going to go back to that level where I get the little twitch, and I know that the prongs are hitting him. Prongs are something else we need to discuss too, George.
Exactly.
Where I know the prongs are getting him, so I just need to get a little twitch in his neck to know that I'm making connection. And instead of going up with the numeric part of it, I can only go so far. What I do is I hold a little bit longer. So you guys hear me talk about tap, tap, tap. And that's usually how I work my stuff. I'm tap, 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 tap. And then once I get that behavioral change, I'm off of it. But in this case, I'm going to change that up a little bit, and I'm going to hold a lower setting a little bit longer. And then when I get the reaction, I've got a backup, because that's what's happened with this dog. There's never been a secondary. Okay, what happens if the E don't work? How can I get the dog to do what I want him to do? Well, first I start with a fence. He can't go outside of the fence. But once the dog, and especially if they're really smart dogs, they figure that out pretty quick. That's why when they're little angels in the yard, but when you open the gate and let them out and they know they got some freedom, adios amigos, they're gone, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, because the dog knows. He knows what his boundaries are. So if there's not a secondary in place, then you're really kind of just beating your head against the wall, because once the dog takes off the mountain or down the road and the E doesn't work, then there's not a parachute.
You done lost him. Yeah.
Right. There's not a parachute. So that was my suggestion. One of the things I asked George if he was using long prongs or short prongs on the collar. And I literally talked about this on a podcast, especially with my young dogs. Now, my older dogs are all wearing shorts. But with the new TT25s, I found it very quickly that the short prongs sometimes do not make a good connection, because that collar is so small. And if your dog has any type of, loose jaw and, skin hanging down, it may not be making a good connection. So when I'm starting my puppies, I got them on everything up to 2 years old. Everything after 2, I don't think I have them, but everything up to 2, all of my younger dogs have the longer prongs, because I want to make sure that when I Bluetooth connect to them, I can communicate. So that was something else that we talked about. But back to the whole topic and the question that the conversation that we were having is, like, this dog was already pre-programmed, and now we're having to go back and rewire it, and it's going to be very time consuming.
Yes.
To fix this, just like the dog that we had that would not out. He wouldn't let go of his toy, so the handler started stemming, and before you know it, he was out of stem, and the dog was just holding on to the ball, because that was the most rewarding thing for him. And he learned that if he held on to it long enough, then I can fight through this. So a lot of things go into play.
Oh yeah, and to add to what you're saying, I've only had this dog 20 some days right now, and I got I think it's a 3-year-old dog, I believe, but it shows how important it is when you got them young pups, really young pups, to get that connection with them. You know, right now that dog doesn't he don't really respect me. He just tolerates me. You know, he's gonna wag his tail and come up to me and everything else, but I'm not his pack leader right now, which is just an interesting thing. So when he's ready to go do his own thing, he could care less about what I think.
Well, and you and I had this conversation too, that how many people just take their dogs out of the yard and put them in the truck and take them and turn them loose.
Right.
You know, we had that conversation, like, and sometimes it makes you, scratch your head, like I want that relationship with my dog. I want, I want to be able to communicate with him. And, and George, as much time as you spend with yours, you're probably ahead of me, but sometimes I can just look at my dogs and they like, okay, they're nonverbal they read body language anyway. Like my police dog, I can position myself a certain way in certain scenarios and he knows, like, I don't have to say a word. I don't even have to look at him. I can stand a certain way. I can do a certain thing. And that dog's like, boom, we're on it. Like he knows. So, I don't know. I sometimes it just makes you want to scratch your head. Like,
yeah, I've wondered I've thought about some of that stuff. I know here with Bear Watcher we'll get off track, but I can be inside my truck, and somebody tell me that, say they just seen a bear or something, and they can judge by my driving, that you're getting ready to pull up on a hot track or something like that. They're just, it's funny how in tune you get with them.
Yeah. And I mean, there's even studies that, if you work a 9 to 5, there's studies that show that dog's internal clock is like ticking 5 minutes before you ever pull in your driveway. Like, they know, like, okay, dad's coming. And then, you hear the muffler coming around the road and your dogs go crazy. Like,
yeah.
They know. But yeah, we are a little bit off there. But yeah, so, George and I had that conversation. You got to have a secondary. You got to have that backup parachute, because if you don't, then you're probably never going to correct that issue. Like if the E don't work, what is your other options? Like, and doing what you're doing, you're going and cutting him off because that's what you have to do to catch him.
Well, and the problem is without a parachute or a secondary, if anything, you're training that dog to just push through that pressure and he can do whatever he wants. Each time he gets through that pressure and gets away with it, then that's just makes it that much harder the next time.
Yeah. And clearly the dog does not understand that the pressure is not for me to fight through. It is a mechanism that dad or mom is communicating that I need to stop what I'm doing and return to them. Right. And that was not clearly established, like you said, with as a puppy, as a young dog. And now that dog's, you said he's 3. So, his jewels has dropped, his masculinity's there, and he's a dog. Like, yep, I don't have to do this. I don't have to do this.
Yeah. So the steps that I'm going through right now with him is, like I said before, I can turn him loose in the yard and he's an angel. I don't even have to use the stimulation or the e-collar. So what I need to do is get him in that controlled environment, which for me, it's going to be a cow field. That's probably, it's a couple acres. That's fenced in. And that way I can get him away from my other dogs and try to actually teach him what tone and stem, what that e-collar is for. I kind of feel like, and I'm not, maybe I'll change my point of view on this as I work with him. But right now, I think he just has that stimulation. He's not putting it together with that is a recall.
Mm-hmm.
That's just something that's bothering him while he's ready to go hunting, and he's going to go ahead and go hunting because it's going to go away in a few minutes.
Are you going to use a check cord or something? That way, if the stem doesn't work, you can actually help him turn towards you?
So kind of my plans is I'm going to absolutely have to use the check cord for the first few times to make sure that, because I feel like if I don't, he's still going to be confused, even though I got him in that fenced in, lot. It's still going to, it's easier. It's going to be easier with that check cord, and try not to use the check cord as only a reinforcement of the stem, and then use the stem only as a reinforcement of the tone.
Yep. And are you going to up the ante on a reward when he's back with you? Or are you just going to use the tactile just to praise and that's it? Like, what is going to be your end?
So with this particular dog, it's going to be praise. I think different. And the reason I say that is, food or something like that isn't going to really, it might. Now, if I take him like a T-bone out there, maybe that will, but just a normal dog treat really isn't going to, he's not a real personable dog. So it's not going to play a big part. And, my biggest thing is just getting him to understand, which I think it's going to be my attitude, him reading my attitude that I'm happy with him. Pat on the head might help things, but like I say, he's not a real personable dog. If I had a lot of time, and we'll see, it might still have to be this way. We'll see what the owner says, but I need him to like me, really, to actually have a little bit of respect for me. And then that way, when I do praise him, he would actually, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but he would want to be praised by me. Right now, he could care less if I like him or I don't.
Yeah. And some dog, like Pino, my service dog, he's not a big, now he likes to interaction with me when we're working and he's getting his toy. Like if we're playing tug or whatever, now he's all about it. Like he bounces off of me. But any other time, that dog could care less if I got a hand on him. Like he don't care. Now my shepherd is laying right here at my feet. Like he can't get enough attention. And Pino's the opposite. Like he'll work for his toy and he'll work for his stuff and he will interact with you because you are the game.
Right.
But other than that, like he don't care. Like he don't care.
Well, and that's the thing with old number 12. I haven't found what, like, something that he really enjoys or likes yet. I haven't found that magic. Like say most dogs you can use treats or something like that, or praise, pat on the head, so a little extra loving, a lot of dogs. But with old number 12, I haven't found that thing that makes him click yet. As of right now, the thing that he enjoys is running scent. He's not real particular about what it is, but so I got to put something together. And like I say, I don't even have the answer yet. I'm still working on this, but I got to figure out something that I can. There's nothing I can reward him right now with that he's going to take as a reward. Right.
Yeah, those are hard. I would tell you this, and I may be letting it slip, but because I'm actually doing a reel and a podcast with it. But try tuna.
Oh, really? Okay.
It is canine crack, I'm telling you. So all of the drag, like all of my, when I do my puppy drags and stuff,
right?
So I learned this from Jeff Shetler. So I got to give him kudos because I learned it from him. But go to the DG, the dollar store, and get you the little packs of tuna.
Right.
And busted it. Like when he comes back to you, just open the pack and see if he'll eat it. Just try it. I'm telling you. Like, I don't know what it is, but it motivates the dogs. It motivates them. And I would be curious to see with him if that's not that won't work for his trigger.
Well, and so I'm just running these scenarios through my head while you're talking. So what I will do is I will start that in the dog yard where he is perfectly comfortable. Call him to me, see if he'll, if that's what he'll, and then I can make that over into the cow field and then potentially get him in a hunting scenario. And when I say hunting scenario, if I get him through them steps, It's not going to be a full-fledged all the hounds with me. It'll probably just be me and Scruff out on a dirt road or something. That way it ain't that full-fledged hunting scenario. Maybe it'll work, maybe it'll not, but I got to back up and take them steps, because kind of like our previous conversation, that just adding stem and more stem and more stem, it's not working. Got to back up.
And the reason we wanted to talk about this before we switch to another conversation is to let people know you can completely go the wrong way with it. That's not the way it's intended to be used. That's not the right way to use it. Guys, I've done it myself. I'm guilty. I raise my hand. I have done this before I actually knew more about how to operate it, and what the drives and what motivates and what discourages. I've ruined several dogs like that. Like I literally, I mean, I'll tell one on myself. I had a nice young dog, and he got to where he would try to outrun it. And this is before the GPS has come out. This is when we had the old Tritronics, and he would literally just outrun it. Like he would just outrun it, and that was on me. I didn't know any better. Like that's just the way I did it, because that's what everybody else was doing. So you can pre-program them, and you kind of, like I said, if you run out of numbers, then you got to ask yourself, if I go to, I use a dog trail a lot, so it's 127. It's really fine tuned. And of course, I use the stuff on my Garmin, which is 18.
Right.
I've got a Garmin Pro 550 sitting right here, and it's got the high, low, and the medium. Like, you got to ask yourself, all right, what happens if I run out of option? Like, what happens when I run out of when I limit out? What do I do now? So you have to ask yourself, what's going to be my backup plan if I go past this? And most of the time, you'll slow down and be like, okay, I need to put something else into place here, because this is not going to work.
And another thing that I've seen happen multiple times is you never correct when you're under, or when your temper's flared. When the temper's up, that is not the time to turn the shocker up.
And it's hard. Like, it's hard
to
talk yourself off the ledge when you're there. You're like, I know we've all been there. We've all done it. And you're right. And that's one of the reasons that I've, like, if my dogs, if they actually take up running off game, and I'm just going to tell this again. If my dogs are in the thick of it, then me applying E and stopping them is not teaching them that I do not want them to run this. They're confused. They're like, I'm running this, and now this is going on, and I'm feeling this type of pressure, and I don't even know what it's for, because I'm 2 miles into this chase.
Right.
So you're not breaking them at that point. And that's why I've learned, like, if mine are on it and they're in it, then I'm just going to cut them off. Now, once they cross the road on me and they see me, and I'm like, hey, come here, like, y'all come here, and I'm hollering for them, or I'm standing there and they avoid me, now the E comes into effect, because they've heard me communicate. They know that E means, I need to come to Dad, and they've seen me and avoided me. So that changes things a little bit. So there are times, and it's, it's just a way. It's not the way. It's just a way. And that's the way that I do it. And that's why that's why I never I try, when I'm working on my dogs, never try to let them run. I try to get them before they run it, because once they get into that, like you're talking about, that when that prey drive switches, it's 10 times harder.
Yeah. But the work has got to be done at home while them pups are, and I say pups, but with me, it's usually pups. But even the homework has got to be done, where when them dogs, when you tone them, they absolutely understand what that means, that is a recall. And then that way, if you got to move up to stem, they know why they're being corrected. Mm-hmm. And then if you do all that homework, then that way, when you do get in that hunting scenario and that prey drive gets up a little bit higher, then you can correct them, and usually, most of the time it works, unless it's just a crazy dog. But what I know, my dog training got a lot better when I started training mules. And the biggest thing is I realized the mules, if they don't want to do something, you can do whatever you want, and it's not going to happen. They could care less. So it made me rethink all of my training. So I took a lot of my mule training, let's see, pretty much desensitized everything, all my stuff with mule training, and put it a lot towards my dogs. And just the thought process is the biggest thing, I believe. Changing the thought process of how to get them dogs to do what you want. And boy, it makes a difference. And it even leads up to, a lot of people, a lot of even decent houndsmen, they would absolutely have a fit if you shocked a dog off a tree. My particular hounds, they know me well enough. They absolutely know when I holler at them to get off that tree, that if I tone them, then they absolutely know that I'm toning them because they're not listening to me, not because there's a bear up a tree and they're barking at it. And if I have to move up, if it's one of them bear that's, got their prey drive really high, then my older dogs, I can use stem on them if I absolutely have to, and there's no ill or side effect. Now, saying that is an older dog that's very experienced. It's aware of me. It knows me very good. I have a really good relationship with that dog. A young pup, there is no way I'd even try to tone it, off a bear tree. And when I say a young dog, that don't mean specifically an age. That just means where his level is in his training.
But your dogs understand what that means. That is a huge factor. That it's not a punishment for doing your job. It's a punishment for not listening.
Yes. And to even, I don't want to give off the wrong thing. If them dogs are roaring and you're hollering, sometimes they might not even be able to hear you. So you got to be careful with that also. And I don't even know if I've showed it in this video, but in any of my videos or anything, but another thing that works very well, and pretty much all my dogs know it too, is I keep a whistle on me. And it is only used for calling them off a bear. That's the only thing that whistle, or basically when they hear the whistle, they know that no matter what, they got to recall or they're going to feel some stimulation. Yep. But saying that, still, you got to do that homework to get them where they absolutely understand. And when you get them to that stage, it's been forever since I've had to actually tone my dogs off a tree. They're so used, they know the drill now. So if I holler at them, they're standing there and looking, and they're wanting to go back. And every once in a while, I'll have to speak to them a few times, and sometimes raise my voice a little bit. But it's very rare that I even have to go to a tone nowadays. But it's that homework, doing that homework beforehand.
Foundation training is so important. It's so important. What you're talking about foundation training, that's going to lead us into our next little conversation. Now, we haven't had this conversation yet, but you had it on Facebook, and it got a lot of attention. And I'll let you talk about the post, and then we'll get into it because it was your post.
Which post was it? Let me make sure I'm on the right one.
About the 6-month-old.
All my little pups.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, and I even got some new news that I haven't even, it actually just happened yesterday. But anyway, so young dogs, that is a question a lot of people has. How I get this question all the time. When do you put a young dog in the woods? When do you actually put a young dog on a bear? And there is no hard answer, or for me, there is no. Every line of dogs is different. Every individual dog is different. And it's so important to know that, what would I say? Be able to read the signs of that dog. How well does he take pressure? What does he do? Correction, like when you're correcting a pup around, a lot of times how he handles correction around the house will tell you how he's going to handle in the woods, which will tell you how he could possibly handle if you don't want him on a bad bear, but if you would get unlucky to have, say, an 8-month-old on a bad bear. If I have a pup, me personally, if I have a pup that's really, what is the word for it? They're pretty soft feeling, like a light type dog. I'm probably going to go ahead and wait a while before I actually try to put that dog on a bear. But at the same time, I got to watch. I'm jumping around too much here. I better go ahead and tell this though, because it'll lay the foundation for people of a lot of the reasons why I do what I do. But hunting here in Virginia and West Virginia, in the location that I hunt, most of our bear, when the dogs actually catch them, they tree reasonably easy. And when I say tree reasonably easy, that means I'm not meaning that they tree easy, but it's more of a race. When your hunt starts, the dogs, it's an all-out race. The dogs, the biggest part of the hunt is the dogs catching up with the bear. Once they catch up with the bear, a lot of times the bear will pop on up a tree with just one dog catching it or something. And the reason I say that is I can get by with turning younger dogs loose on bear in the terrain that I hunt, versus if I was going to be up in Maine or say down in the swamps where you're going to catch a pile of bear on the ground. If I'm going to be in a location where I catch a pile of bear on the ground, I'm going to be a little bit more conservative with my young dogs. So get me out of this, Heath. I done jumped all around everywhere.
No. Well, that's what the post was. You posted a picture of your pup and you said, I know a lot of people don't, whatever. And I was reading through the comments, and, and one that stands out to me was Paul Laney. He put in there that he hunts them as soon as he can. And, my rule of thumb, and again, this is a great topic. My rule of thumb, I like mine to be around a year old, but
right.
I also know that, like, if you're really watching your dogs, you explained a lot of it. The maturity level has a lot to do with that. Where I let my dogs run loose pretty much until they're 6. Literally, I've got 6 puppies out here right now. It's 8:30 at night. They've been loose all day. They're loose. They'll be loose. They'll be loose in the morning until they start running off. Is usually 5 or 6 months old when they start going back here and running a speed beef across the county. Like, they're loose. And I have noticed that they mature a little faster.
Right.
And they can do things a little different. But I also know from my canine training that I can take an 8 or 10-month-old dog and crush it.
Right.
Like, I can physically, I don't mean physically, but mentally crush it, because you're asking, and you hear me say this all the time, you're asking a juvenile to step in the ring with Mike Tyson, AE the bear. And some dogs, some young dogs, like you said, genetically they're programmed and they can handle that pressure. And some dogs you can't. So for me, in my thinking process, this is like playing Russian roulette.
Right.
Like, okay,
exactly.
If I take this 6-month-old puppy out, and let's just say you happen to get on that one, like the early season, I had a bear run all 3, run them off. And I'm not proud to say that, but he run them off like he did. Now, if those dogs hadn't been a year or above, I don't know what would have happened. Like, they may never go back. So in my mind, and, seeing dogs and training dogs and working dogs and, like, putting dogs into conflict like in the law enforcement side with apprehension, like, it's a gamble. Like, it is a gamble. Now, if you've got an established bloodline and you know that these dogs at 6 and 8 months old, they usually can take that pressure mentally, then there's nothing wrong with that. I had a little puppy. Well, she's not now. Sassy. At 6 months old, man, she was cranking like, oh, and I took her like 3 or 4 times during training season. And I literally would go out to her pen in the morning and tell myself, leave her, go. Right. And I would make myself leave her because I didn't want her getting hurt. I didn't want her getting crushed at 6 months old. And then at in December rolled around. She was September, October. So she was 8.5, 9 months old. And I hunted her like a handful of times, 5 or 6. And like she started coming on, like she was
right,
turning backtracks around, making races, leading races. And it was so hard for me not to hunt her every day. Every day. It was hard. But I try to be realistic and with like, but anyway, I kind of went down a rabbit hole there. But it is different. Like if your dogs, can mentally handle that and that, then pour it to them. If you're not sure, then like what I was doing with Sass is, I'd hunt her once a week or sometimes twice a week. And I was very cautious about how I turned her out, when I turned her out, where I turned her out. I may have been overcautious. Like I may have been. Maybe I should have just shunked her in there every time I dropped the tailgate, but I didn't. And everything's turned out fine. You're not going to hurt them by not doing it, right?
Exactly. And so here, a little bit behind the scenes. So a lot of what I look for, I'm lucky to be able to do the same way. I let my pups run loose. So I keep we butcher hogs every year, and it's not wild hogs. It's just regular old butcher hogs. When I find them pups going around there and starting to bark at them pigs, then I know they're either ready to be tied up but saying that, but it also gives me signs of them ones when that pig comes up and, starts running at that dog. And I need to make this clear. The pups are not inside the pen with the hog, but they'll just go up to the fence. And when that pig runs at them, and then depending on how their reaction, if that pup runs back to his doghouse, then I know he's not ready for the bear woods. If that pup kind of starts baying really hard on that pig, then it tells me maybe, I had to be cautious, but he's probably ready to start heading out to the woods. And the same thing with my mules. Them dogs will, when them pups start going out in there and messing with them horses or mules, and I got a couple good mules that handle them pups pretty well. They'll swat them or whatever. And but that gives me little things like that, gives me signs and shows me whether them dogs are ready to go in the woods or not. But then also there you got the opposite end of that too. If you got one of them, and this is a scenario I had last year. So I had a young English pup, really young. I think she was 4 months old, 3 or 4 months old. Like I say, she was really, really young. And I was not intentionally hunting her. I was just letting her go with me, ride around in the truck. And but the first time I walked her into a tree, the bear bowed out, and she took it down through the woods just to getting it. So, which I thought that was okay. That didn't really play a big factor in my decision that I'm getting ready to say. But the next time that I took that little pup, like I say, I think she was like 4 months. But bear bailed out, and when he bailed out, instead of him running on, he kind of just sat there a few minutes. The bear did, and this little pup just went in there and tackled right into it. So, and she got cuffed and stuff, and she did stick with it. She took it to the next tree and treated again. And like I say, she's like around 4 months old. But instead of me being all excited and ready to hunt her, I put her up. She was just in my mind, she was just too young to be getting that sort of treatment. And I seen how crazy she was. So it was just, I wanted her to get a little older, a little bit faster on her feet, a little bit better in the woods. And like I say, now she's 15, 16, 17 months, and she'll tree bear by herself right now. So, but what I did is, so last fall when I had her in the woods and I seen that bear, like I say, she was too aggressive. I put her up. I got her back out in kill season, but I was very conservative of how I hunted her. And then when I actually did start hunting her again, when she was up about that 8 month, 8, I ain't sure, I might have my dates a little bit wrong, but she did very well. And like I say, she's she's kind of got a little bit better, a little more sense with a bear on the ground right now. So you got, like I say, you got both sides. There's like a fine line of having one of them pups that's just crazy, too crazy, or the one that you'll, which they're too crazy. They have the potential to get hurt really bad, or they have the potential to just get scared to death. And then you got to work all the way back through that thing of getting them back on a bear.
Yeah. And some won't go back, but
yes,
I think, like I said, after you posted that, and, I've been very vocal about a year old, but I have hunted dogs younger.
Right.
You talk about a 4-month-old. I had a little female named Sky. I picked her up when I was in New York, and my buddy's Rodney's, and I went down to Anthony's to hunt with him, and I left her in the pen that morning. Anthony's like, "You going to leave her in the pen?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, she's going to bark and the neighbors are going to complain." And I'm like, "Okay." So we took her with us, 4 months old, caught a bear on the ground. And she was, I didn't have her on a lead. I just had her with me. Didn't even have a tracking collar on her. And that little scuzz, she went right in there and bayed up on them dogs there with the old dogs. And now the bear wasn't mean. He was one that he's the one you like. He just kind of walked and, y'all stay away from me. But 4 months old. So I mean, I've done the same thing. And I think now I pay more attention to it, and I'm definitely not in a rush to take my, when I say younger, I'm saying under a year. I'm not in a rush to take them. Now, do I? Yes. And I'm with you. I've got the horse farm right here beside me, and when my pups start running those horses, and the horses get in the field and they start acting crazy, and that's when it usually triggers them. Boom. And then the next thing you know, they're sliding under the fence and they're running down through there, and I'm having to go get them off of them. But that's kind of the same thing, George. Is kind of the telltale. Like, okay, well, they're baying at a 1,000-pound animal. And I've been very fortunate that horses haven't like kicked one bad enough to hurt it. But yeah, I think there is no wrong answer, because I know people that take them at 4 and 5 months, and the collars don't even hardly fit them that age. I see people taking them at 4 and 5 months old and getting them out and getting them exposed. And, I know people, take them at a year old and a year and a half. There is no right or wrong. I think the best thing is knowing your dog, knowing your bloodline. And if the dog's not ready, don't force it.
Yeah, exactly.
And if I had a dog that was over aggressive like yours, I'd have done the same thing. Like, I'd have put it up and I'd have made sure she matured that away, because she's going to take a whipping eventually.
Oh yeah. And
after, I want her to be able to handle it mentally when she does. And then
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I don't know later she's going to get holes. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. People's got to look at that mentality, the mentality of it. And I've never really looked at, until I started training apprehension dogs, and, we were importing these dogs at a very young age, and we had a decoy that literally was so hard on the dog. And when I say hard on them, I mean, like, he was putting the dogs in situations that they couldn't mentally handle. Instead of building them up, like, he'd ruin them. Like, he'd ruin them. And it wasn't until I got with one of my mentors, Franco, and Franco started teaching me, like, how to watch the dogs progress. And when you do something that sets them back a little bit, like, he helped me and taught me a lot of those things. And I never applied that to my hounds in that sense. Like, until that point, I took, if bear season was in and they was 6 months old, 5 months, that's what I did, because that's what everybody else did around me. And then my philosophy started changing. And yes, there are 6-month-old pups that can handle it. They're 7 and 8 and 10.
Right.
And there's also 15 months old that can't handle it. And then you got to ask yourself the hard question is, do I actually want this in my gene pool? Like, is this something that's worth breeding? Is this something I want to keep?
Well, so the interesting thing is, and this goes along with what we're talking about. So I had a litter of pups last year. Well, I think it's the one that I actually posted about. I think they was born in July. So that'd put them right at 6 months. But anyway, so the female, I kept a female and a male out of that litter. I noticed right off that the female was maturing a little faster, which to me, it's usually typical of a female. Mm-hmm. I would much rather, if I'm going to pick a dog, I'm going to pick a female. But anyway, so kind of how I've run that down through this training season is, so the female, she got up there at that 5 month. She was a little bit ahead of the male dog as far as maturity. And what I'm saying is when you turn them loose in the yard, she always wanted to go back to that darn pig, where the male dog, he just wants to go play. So long story short, I don't necessarily like taking litter mates in the woods at the exact same time when they're that young. And the reason is usually you get more playing than you do actually, Mm-hmm. So I wanted to start her first. And when I say start her first, I just wanted to get her in the woods. I didn't really care if she run a bear or not, but I wanted to get her in the woods, just get in the rhythm of how my day plays out, far as getting the dogs up in the morning, getting them collared, get her in the woods, get her used to, like I say, cleaning out, not running around barking in the truck. That's another thing I like working on with pups and that kind of stuff. And so I put 2 or 3 weeks in with her into that. And, I think last week she made, I think 5 trees. And that's from start to finish, so she's doing really well. So anyway, so she's definitely at the stage of where I'm ready to pull the other pup out. And, so I pulled the other pup out and it worked out really well. So the female, she knows what the game is now. You turn them loose, she's going ahead and getting out of there. She's going ahead and she's either going to be with the other dogs or running the bear or whatever the case. And let's see, I think yesterday or the day before, the other male pup, I took him. I struck a bear from the road and they took it off, went north a ridge or two and treated. It was like a mile or less. And what was interesting is, so I took the other male pup and I was walking him down to his first tree ever. And he hit the track, and just his genetics, I'm assuming, made him hit that track, start barking. And he, when I got to the tree, he wasn't treeing. He was just messing around. He had no idea. It was his first bear tree ever. And he happened to look up and see the bear. And so his first tree, the little booger started treeing. And I was getting the dogs tied back, and the darn bear bailed out. And he took it around the ridge. And he wouldn't have treated by himself, but I cut Scruff back with him. And they went about 200 yards and treated again. So I reckon the reason I'm saying this is, so the first pup, like I said, got it started. The second pup, it was so much easier starting it where I could just concentrate on him, versus concentrating on 2 fresh puppies at one time. So
well, I think that is a great recipe, because that's what I do. If I have multiples, I get one going, and then after it's going and it's staying and doing what it's supposed to, then I'll get this. I mean, it's hard to do 2 at a time. You get a lot more playing and headaches than you do anything else.
Oh yeah. Now I will say, I don't know if a lot of people will be able to relate exactly to my technique and story, because I am very blessed to get to hunt a lot. So I don't know. Do you change your techniques if you're like the normal weekend or 2 day a week? Like, is it, since you don't get the pups out much, do you go ahead and take a chance and take 2 of them at one time? Or, yeah, I really don't know the answer to that.
Well, as a trainer, my answer would be, you can do it. And then if it is a disaster, don't do it. Like, right. Go take them. And if your time's limited, you take them. And, if you get a bunch of playing and they get to chasing each other around like pups do a lot of times, and they don't end up on the race, then I think, okay, then now I got to separate them and, get one started. And even again, I'm going to go back to my original statement. If that's the way you can only hunt is on weekends and holidays, your time's limited. I would rather spend that time being more productive with one pup than getting half of it done with both pups.
Oh, absolutely.
Because after that season, then the next chance I can get the second one going. And again, it's not a rush. So, you don't have to start the dog at 6 months old or even a year old at that. Like, depending on how birthdays fall and stuff, the dog may, a July pup is perfect for me because they're a year old when August comes around, like, and it's the B litter that I have. That's exactly what they are. They're August. They're the end of July, right there in August. They was perfect. And I didn't even try. Like, I was too busy getting the other dogs in shape, trying to go to Canada and other things. And I just put them on the back burner. I'm like, it'll be fine. It's fine. And, our season's over and all of them's making races. They're all, I can literally hunt all of them together right now and they're going to go. So, I think, in my opinion, if I was limited on time, I would try. And if that proved to be not successful, then I would rather be successful with one than chasing two, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll even say a mistake I made. This was a few years back. I think it was probably more than a few years back, but anyway, I had this little young, I think she was a plot pup, a little female pup. And I carried her around with me everywhere. She was just a sweet little dog, handled really well. And so she was when she could just get to walking good, I was taking her to trees with me. So by the time she was, I might have my ages a little off, but way, way, way too young to even run a bear. She was treeing. And just this little teeny pup treeing on a bear. And she got in the habit of, she handled so well, I never tied her up or anything. So every time when I'd be leaving the tree, the bear would bail out. She'd be all over it. She'd chase it, tree it again. I'd go get her, I would go, I say, go get her. I would, have my other dogs there. I'd just holler at her. She'd come on with me and we'd go on back to the truck. I was thinking that she was going to be the greatest bear dog in the whole world, because she was treeing bear so consistently. And when I say treeing bear, she was little, but when the bear would come out, she would chase it at least, half a mile or so. And either she would have it treed or she'd quit and come back. And that was consistent day after day after day. And I did not realize it, but I think I was training that dog to quit. I was training that pup to quit. By me standing on one ridge, she'd run a bear off, tree it on the next ridge, and me being too lazy to walk across there and get her, and me thinking she was such a little teeny young pup that it wasn't hurting anything. I'd just yell at her a couple times, and she'd come back to me just tickled pink. And looking back, like I say, she never, when she got a year old, she never got no better. If the bear came out, or if I put her on a fresh track from the road, the couple scenarios that I really realized I'd done messed up was getting a bear that crossed the road, put more dogs on it. She'd go 500-600 yards and quit and come back. And she never made it over a mile ever, when I had her. And she never, ever did get out of that. And I think some dogs, it probably wouldn't, their genetics would have been strong enough to kick in. But I think with the way that I had her handling and stuff, I ruined her. I ruined that pup that had the potential to be a great bear dog. But just by putting it on too many, taking it too young, not really paying any attention to it, walking it into way too many trees. And And like I say, just letting it do whatever it wanted as a really young pup, and then calling it and just heading back to the truck every day, day after day after day. She got so used to that she realized, and the problem is, I'll back up a little bit more. The problem is though, even when she was way too little to keep up with the other dogs, she would run as hard as she could go, and I'd call her back. And then she got to realizing that if she comes back to me, eventually she's still going to end up at that bear tree. It might be an hour or so later. But she figured out, she was smart enough to figure out that if she stayed with me, that she was still going to get to the bear tree one way or another. She wouldn't have to do all that work of running. So where genetically she should have enjoyed the run enough to go, but I screwed up. I mean, it's just reality.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a learning lesson, and people don't understand. You condition that dog at a very impressionable age.
Yeah.
That this is what Dad wants, and I can still get what I need, the bear, whether I run it or go with him. Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, people, yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, dog training is so, like, it is so fine line.
Yeah.
And I mean, the naturals, and we have a handful of those in our career that it don't matter what you do, you turn them loose and they go and they're treed and they do their thing. And then it's the other, 90% of the dogs that we deal with, you've got to tweak and you've got to kind of figure out this and the little nuances. And, that's what really makes you a good dog trainer, I think, and being able to use multiple methods for multiple dogs, because, if I pick one method, I can be a great trainer, but I've got to have dogs that fit the mold for that method.
Right.
It's the stuff like that, what you've discussed, and, that dog, going young and not having to finish and not being, I mean, yeah, it is what it is. I mean, we've all
basically the summary of it is I just took her when she wasn't physically able to make them long chases, and I should have picked up on that. One or two times would not have hurt anything. If I would have put her back and then kept her a couple months and put her back, she'd have probably been just fine. But me doing that day after day after day, her not physically able to keep up with the big dogs, it just me not paying attention. I trained her to just to come back. It was a way easier way to get to the same result.
Yeah. Well, that's a great topic on pups, and like I said, there's no right or wrong answer, and everybody does it differently, and it's what your preference is, and what your bloodline does, and how much are you allowed to hunt. Like, you hunt more than I do, and I mean, I hunt a lot.
Right.
I don't hunt as much as I want to, but I hunt a lot, and I do have, maybe I have some more opportunities than some of the other people that's working a 9 to 5 and families, and
right.
You and I talked about that. Like, we're running ragged right now ourselves, but
exactly.
Well, George, let's wrap this up with let's talk about some dog food real quick.
Yeah. Okay.
So I know you're feeding Inukshuk, and I know you put out a video, which got a lot of views, and so you've been feeding it consistent since what, May?
So May, right?
May. All right. So what's your take? What are you thinking? What do you like? What do you dislike? Just give me the down low.
Yeah. So basically I fed it over the summer, which summer, other than getting the dogs out to just run around, not hunt, not in the hunting atmosphere, because here in Virginia we cannot hunt bear in the summer. But just typical exercise and stuff. I was easily feeding a cup and then 3/4, probably under 2 cups to 90% of my dogs, and holding them up very well. So that leads into August when I started running. And that's when I really noticed the difference of Inukshuk versus some of the previous feeds that I've been feeding. And what I'm saying is usually by the end of August, with me running 4 to 5 days a week, usually by the end of August, I'm starting to really have to pick up my portion, my feeding portion, to keep them dogs up. Just a few things that I've made notes of, and I'll eventually have a video out. I'll probably wait till first of the year, and I'll put out another video, and we'll see if my results are still the same as what I'm seeing right now. But right now, when August come, I picked all my dogs up about a quarter a cup with Inukshuk just to get prepared, because I figured they was going to fall off. And the interesting thing that I've seen is, so by the end of August, I actually had to back some of the dogs back down just a little bit. So the long short of it is that feed is definitely holding the dogs up very well. I'm not going to say is it a miracle food? Are you going to tree a ton more bear? Are you going to make an old crazy dog all of a sudden act sensible? No, it's not no miracle or anything like that. But the cleanup, man, the cleanup is unbelievable. The stool, the waste. I mean, even leads to the dogs in the truck. You know, if you got to leave a dog in the truck, used to be I'd have to clean my truck out at the end of the day. Now, I mean, they don't. They'll usually they'll use it about once a day after they eat, and that is all the stool that they. I mean, that's all the waste that I get. Usually, typically one time a day, and that's it. I like the feed. I mean, I'll know more as the year goes, but I'm feeding about a full 2 cups to each dog now, and it is still holding them up really, really well. To be honest, can I tell 100% a difference of like a speed factor or running better? I like scientifically, I can't. There's no way I can prove that they run better this year than they did last year. I have no idea. There's no way to compare that. But just as a speculation, it does seem like they can run better. So I don't know if that is the truth or not, but I do like the dog food.
Well, you're saying that they're holding up better.
They're holding up unbelievably. But to add to that holding up, I think there is a basis on that energy level that food puts out. Far as them, and when I say holding up, like their weight itself is holding up, but just that stamina to be able to run day after day after day. This year, where in the past I've had to, if you get on a really long run, sometimes you got to put that dog up the next day just because they just don't have no energy. They're tired. This year, I'm running into the issue more of the dogs themselves are ready to roll. They can go hunting the next day. If anything, I'm fighting feet problems this year more than I ever have. And that's basically because we're so dry. I think that's what it is. And their pads just can't hold up. But back to the dog food, the stamina of the dogs is really well this year.
Yeah, and let's just clarify. You're feeding the 30-25 blend.
I'm feeding 30-25. Yes.
Yeah. So I get a lot of questions, so I'm just going to, put it out on this. Everybody keeps asking me what blend I'm feeding. Well, I've got 8 dogs that are my main dogs, not counting my 4 B litters. So I have 12 total. But
Right.
8 dogs that I'm feeding right now, I'm feeding a 32-32. And George put it out on his video about the resting maintenance calorie intake on a dog. So the resting maintenance is about 1150.
Right.
So break your calorie per cup down, whatever you're feeding, and you should be getting about 1150 calories per cup, just for dogs being in the pen and in the yard and not really putting on any exercise. So anyway, I bump my dogs up in October the 1st. I start feeding 32-32. and I got 8 dogs that I'm feeding that to, and I will feed those 8. I buy 15 bags of the 32, which is a 44-pound bag, and I feed it till I run out. And it's usually about mid-February is when I finally run out. And then I switch them right back to the 30-25. A couple reasons I do that is because the fat, which is where they get their energy, and George is talking about the stamina, I bump the fat up from 25 to 32%. And it also helps them maintain a very healthy weight during the cold months because if you listen to the podcast I did with Emily Corey, and she talks about how many calories they burn during colder weather and how each 5 degrees takes on more calorie burning. So I just do that for my own personal preference. I'm able to maintain the dogs in December when I'm running every day, plus the cold weather, and that's usually when we start getting those colder nights and stuff. So October 1st, I start feeding 32, and I feed it till I run out of my 15 bags, which is usually mid-February, and then I go back to the 30-25. I had a guy ask me if I switch to the 26-16 during the summer months. I do not. I feed 30-25 year-round. The only thing that I feed the 26-16 to is my puppies. And the reason I do that is because it will break down in water where the 32-32 or the 30-25 will not. And I try to make it soft for my puppies up until they're, 3 months old or so. And then as the dogs grow about 4 to 5 months old, I will switch them to the 30-25. That's just my preference. You can do it any way you want to, but I don't switch mine back to the 26-16 in the summer. I run 30-25 all year round. I do not see a difference with it as far as, it being too hot. I know a lot of people ask that question. Like George said, we don't run during the summer. We can't hear. So I don't have really anything to compare that to.
Right.
But that's kind of where I'm at, and that's what I do.
Yeah, I agree. And I want people to be aware of too, if they have a skinny dog, just buying one bag of Inukshuk isn't going to just cure your problems. And the reason that I say that is, so I get a dog sent to me. Anytime a dog gets sent to me, I take a picture of it the day it arrives. And then some of the dogs, I've adjusted their weight while they've been with me. And usually I've noticed you're going to see like at least 20 days before you can visually see a difference in them dogs as far as their weight adjustment. So I don't want people to get the wrong notion that they have a skinny dog, they can just go buy a bag of this feed, and then all of a sudden it's going to be a miracle. A week later, it's going to be fat and plump. That's not going to happen. But overall, as far as me running, the feed does really absolutely, I ain't going to say unbelievable. It does really well, though, in keeping and holding the dog up. My dogs right now, I'm getting into this cooler weather. I'm running them hard. At least I'm trying to hunt them probably 5 days a week if their feet can hold up. And their weight is holding up no problem with 2 cups a day. So
yeah, and that's same thing. I'm feeding 32 to 8, and I'm feeding 2 cups. Of course, the calorie intake's up. That's 720 calories per cup versus the 578. What you're feeding right now, but I'm still feeding 2 cups, and I've actually, when I say 2 cups, it's a light 2 cups because
exactly.
Yeah, it's a light because 2 of my dogs are putting on, like Attica. She keeps really easy. She's a bigger dog, but literally she's an easy keep. So I've cut her, like she's getting under 2 cups. And Spook's getting a light 2 cups. Axe is getting a full 2 cups, which he's my 72-pound dog, so he's my biggest. So, it's the same thing. Even though we're feeding a little different food, but we're feeding the same amount. And
well, yeah, I think people's got to understand too that every dog or every line of dogs, a lot of times they got that different metabolism. They handle that feed a little bit different. And what I've noticed is, so I've had one dog for a couple months that is a different line than my personal line of dogs, and it takes a touch more than 2 cups to hold it up. Like I say, my personal line, they're really easy keepers just in general. So 2 cups holds them up. Two cups of the 30-25 is holding them up very well so far. Now, when it starts getting really cold, even though their body condition I feel like is still going to look good, I'm still going to up that intake just to get that energy level up. And I haven't even 100% decided, but I think my next pallet, I believe I'm going to step up to the 32 myself, just to get that intake up a little bit, even though their body condition looks really well right now.
Yeah. And one thing I want to go back and touch on, you said it about buying one bag. We all know scientifically that you need 60 to 90 days of that food run through their system to get the full effect. Now,
Exactly.
yes, you may see a change in a week or two. Yes, but you're not getting the full the full effect of everything that the food, the nutrition can do for the dog until you get past that 60 days. So that's one of the reasons I don't switch back and forth. Like I just feed 30-25 because, if I've got to feed it 60 days ahead of time to get them where I need to get them, then really there's no point in switching it. So, and it balances out, like you said, I'm going to be feeding less of it anyway. Like right. I'm not doing it. And every dog's different. Every thing is a little bit different. Like, but where I've been feeding it so long, most of my dogs remain, they're pretty much leveled out. Like I know what's what, who's doing, and it's 2 cups and under basically the majority of the year.
Right.
So
yeah, it's long story short, it's a good feed that I'll continue to feed.
Yep. Yeah. I'm well pleased with it. And, I've got a lot of people buying it now that they're seeing too much inconsistency in the foods that they're feeding, different colorations. One bag or two, the dogs will have diarrhea really bad. The water intake has doubled with some of their foods. So that's the one thing that's one of the reasons they switched. And I will tell you that I got to spend some time with Daniel Kerr, and he's one of their reps for Inukshuk. And I didn't know this, and that's why I want to say it on a podcast. Inukshuk is one factory. That's it. There's not 4 or 5 factories throughout Canada and the United States. They're one factory. They're family owned. Emily has now taken over the company. But when they source their proteins out, all of their proteins come from the same thing. So, and why I say that's why you're getting some of this discoloration. This is why you're getting some of the inconsistencies in the food, because if a factory in St. Louis is making something, it's getting local proteins there. And if the factory in California is making it, then you're getting a protein there. And that's why when you go buy a bag from Tractor Supply and Royal King and go to Petco and you get the same foods and you have 3 different color foods, right. That's why. And Inukshuk will never change that. They source their stuff local. They get it from the same source, and it has to meet their standard, or it does not go into their food. So their food is more consistent because of that.
Right. And I'll say too, because something you get questions all the time. I have seen no hot spots. I haven't noticed anything of the dogs running hot. Water intake, I have. So basically, I took my 5-gallon buckets out, and I started watering them in small portions, just so I could tell what they was drinking. And just curious, because you get that question so many times, and there is no difference in water intake. The horrors things that a lot of people are worried about, just me personally, I have not noticed any of that. Yeah, you hear all that stuff of just way too much protein, way too hot of a feed. I haven't seen any of it.
Yeah, but does people understand that? And again, I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not, but I've spoke to a lot of them, and I've sat through classes with them. Everybody says a protein burns your kidneys up. Proteins help rebuild joints. They help rebuild muscle. Like, it does so many other things than what people actually think it does. And, after talking to numerous vets, like, I feel like a lot of this kidney failure is contributed to two things. And maybe I could do a follow-up podcast with this. It is either Lyme's disease or heat exhaustion. And with that heat exhaustion, you get that delayed. I know me and you and Alex talked about this up at the Sportsman Show. With heat exhaustion, you get a delayed effect. You run your dogs in August, and guys, if this has happened, maybe sit down and think about it for a minute. But you run your dogs in August, you get them completely heat exhausted or heat stroke. The dogs are okay in 2 or 3 days. They're back to normal. But what happened is that damage done to their body internally, i.e., their kidneys, is a longer term effect. So you continue to run them August, September, and then by December, you're starting to see the dog drop off or the kidneys start to shut down because it's got a delayed effect. And I feel like that has played more into effect than the food being parentheses hot.
Yeah.
And I think that, we just haven't put that together yet. It's being talked about more. The vets are a lot sharper. There's more technology. There's more studies. But I feel like and I was told the same thing over the years, don't feed that high protein stuff. And me personally, I think it's the biggest bunch of baloney that I've ever heard. And again, that's just me. I'm not speaking for anybody else. That's when I started feeding Purina, the 30-20, Harris Dunlap up in New York worked for Alpo, and Harris got me feeding it and telling me, and he runs sled dogs. And Inukshuk comes from sled dogs. So I've been feeding that stuff, since 20 years, since early 2000s. I've been feeding high protein stuff, and I've got most of my dogs live from 12 to 16 years old. I just had one of my old dogs passed away a year before last. It was 17. My last police dog was 16. Ring was 15. Brandy was 16. So if that's the case, then explain to me why my dogs are living that long.
I fully believe that a lot of times, especially going back to that Lyme disease or them kidneys shutting down because of that heat exhaustion, the problem is I think them kidneys shutting down, something else gets blamed so many times because you don't think about 3 months before when that dog got, heat stroked out. Mm-hmm. But that personally, I had a dog 4 years ago. I had that happen to a dog. I had it happen firsthand, and it was exactly how you just described it. I heat stroked it. And when I say heat stroke, I had to walk in, carry it out. It didn't act right for probably a day or so, and then it come right back and started hunting. You would have never thought anything was wrong. And then it was about, I'd say 90 days later, I'm just guessing, a couple months later, in probably a 2-week period, I noticed he was off on his runs. And I probably, looking back, there probably was nothing they could do, but looking back, I thought something was just off. I didn't take him to the vet or anything. But then I come out and I noticed all of a sudden he got off his feed. And when he got off his feed, he wasn't out really. So I rushed him to the vet, and it was too far gone. His kidneys was gone, shut down.
Yeah.
So, but looking back, that's exactly what had happened, that time.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, you're probably right. People just don't think about, well, 3 months ago this happened, or 4 months ago this happened. And
yeah, it's such a delayed response.
mm-hmm, it is. But most of the time, like I said, if it happens in July and August, by December, it's probably fatal.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, George, I know we have kept these listeners on here for a long time. So I appreciate the conversation. I know you and I are going to have many, many more. And we keep it up. We may have to come on and discuss something else. But
yeah,
I appreciate
we'll do a secondary to old number 12. See how he ends up.
We can do that. But I appreciate your time and coming on and chit chatting. And I really, really enjoy the conversations we have off the record. And it's always good to bounce things, because I may not be seeing what you're seeing, and vice versa. And it's so good to have those people in your circle to, just to talk to, and like I said, even if you don't have an answer, like, we'll try this, and if that don't work, we'll try this, and if that don't work, we'll do this.
Right.
It's always good to have some people around like that. And like I said, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
No, I appreciate it. I've been hunting for I don't know how many years, but the thing is I still feel like I'm trying to figure this thing out.
Mm-hmm.
You would think you'd know a little bit by now, but darn, every day it seems like a little something new gets thrown at you. So, but I appreciate it. Thanks for bringing me on here.
Absolutely. You should always be learning. And if you're not, you probably ought to step back and say, why am I not learning? Because there's always something to learn.
Right.
All right, George, thank you for helping us teach, train, and learn.
Okay. All right, Heath, I'll talk to you later.
Do you like to be outdoors like I do? If so, unlock the wilderness with onX Maps. It is your ultimate guide to exploring, hunting, and conquering the great outdoors. With detailed maps, real-time tracking, and exclusive access to public and private lands, onX Maps is your key to adventure. Discover the possibilities and never get lost again with onX. So subscribe today using the promo code K920. Letter K, number 9, 20, and know where you stand.